Welcome, sleepless one. Tonight, we drift through corridors of silk and steel, not through the chambers of kings, but into the far more dangerous world of queens. These were not passive wives in high towers. They were power brokers, plotters, lovers, survivors. And yes, sometimes scandal made flesh. They didn't just wear crowns. They wore poison rings and smiles sharp enough to slice a courtier's throat. Politically, of course. So close your eyes. Breathe and follow me into a world of whispered affairs, velvet betrayal, and feminine fury dressed in royal lace. This isn't romance. It's real. It's brutal. And it's exactly what history tried to forget. She married the most powerful man in the world, and then she slept with half the city, or so the rumors said. This was Valeria Messalina, third wife of Emperor Claudius, a woman whose name would echo through history as a synonym for scandal, seduction, and the dark art of imperial survival. She was young, beautiful, barely out of her teens when she became Empress, and from the moment she stepped into the palace, Rome whispered. Messalina wasn't discreet. She didn't have to be. She was the emperor's wife, and behind Claudius's aging scholarly back, she was ruling the capital one bed at a time. Senators, gladiators, slaves. She chose them, used them, discarded them, not quietly, not politically, but like a woman who understood that the emperor's bed wasn't enough to hold her ambition. And then came the contest. According to Roman historians, who loved a juicy lie, Messalina once challenged the most famous courtesan in Rome to a sexual endurance match. The rules were simple. Who could sleep with more men in one night? The courtesan gave up at 25. Messalina kept going. Historical fact? Maybe not. But even the lie tells you what people thought of her, how big her shadow had grown. Messalina wasn't just sleeping with Rome. She was building a network of lovers, loyal to her, not the emperor. She arranged secret marriages, bribed soldiers, eliminated rivals, and then she made her biggest mistake. She married another man while Claudius was still alive, publicly, while the emperor was away. She and her lover, Gaius Silius, held a wedding with witnesses, music, and feasting, as if Rome wouldn't notice that the Empress had just committed treason by bigamy. Claudius did notice. He returned to the city in stunned silence. His advisors convinced him that she was planning a coup. Messalina fled, begged for mercy, tried to hide in a garden shed. It didn't work. She was executed, stabbed by a centurion when she couldn't bring herself to do it. Her name was erased, her statues pulled down, her legacy sealed in sex and blood. But Rome never forgot. They whispered her name for centuries, Messalina, the empress who made virtue irrelevant, the wife who turned pleasure into politics, the woman who ruled with her body. She was born in Vienna, married into Versailles, and became a queen at 19, with powdered hair, silk shoes, and absolutely no idea how much France hated her. Her name was Marie Antoinette, and she was never allowed to be a person, only a symbol of everything wrong with power, privilege, and powdered sugar. But oh, did she play the part? She arrived at the French court like a glitter bomb, feathers in her hair, laughter in her voice, no political training, no concept of public image. And the moment she stepped into the palace, They watched. Every glance, every meal, every bedroom rumor. She was barely a teenager when she married Louis XVI, a king with more interest in keys and locks than anything remotely physical. The two didn't consummate the marriage for 7 years. That's not rumor. That's medically confirmed awkward silence. While the king fumbled through anatomy, the public imagined what Marie was doing instead. They accused her of affairs with handsome Swedish soldiers, of scandalous parties, of dressing like a shepherdess while people starved. The gossip machine churned day and night, portraying her as a sexual predator, a foreign agent, even a lover of her own brother-in-law. There were pamphlets, illustrated, explicit, and passed hand to hand in the streets of Paris. They called her Madame Deficit because while bread prices rose, she built a miniature fantasy village at Versailles where she could pretend to be a peasant, complete with dairymaids and silk-trimmed aprons. It wasn't just extravagance, it was bad theater. And then there was the diamond necklace affair, a scandal she had nothing to do with, but one that stained her name forever. A group of con artists tricked a cardinal into thinking Marie wanted a 2 million livre diamond necklace. When the truth came out, it was too late. The people didn't care that she was innocent. She was guilty of being Marie Antoinette. By the time the revolution came, she was already a villain in the people's eyes. They didn't see a queen. They saw powdered hypocrisy, stacked high like her wigs. And yet, as France burned, Marie changed. She became stoic, protective of her children, almost dignified. But it wasn't enough. In 1793, they cut her hair, stripped her title, paraded her through the streets in a cart, and beneath the shadow of the guillotine, Marie Antoinette did not scream. She stepped on her executioner's foot and whispered, "Pardon me, monsieur, I did not mean to do that." And then she was gone. The girl who wanted nothing more than a party became the woman whose name meant decadence incarnate. History judged her, but behind the corsets and diamonds, maybe there was just a girl who never got to grow up before the world demanded her head. She was born plain Eliza Gilbert in Ireland, but Eliza didn't want to be Irish. She didn't want to be plain. She wanted the world, and she wanted it staring at her in lace gloves, asking for more. So she renamed herself Lola Montez, rebranded as a Spanish dancer, even though she couldn't dance, even though she wasn't Spanish. What she could do was make powerful men stop breathing. She stormed onto the stage in Vienna, Berlin, Paris, with wild dark curls, flashing eyes, and a whip. She didn't seduce, she challenged, and that was far more dangerous. Lola became famous not for pirouettes, but for what she did after the curtain fell. She had affairs with Franz Liszt, the rock star of 19th century Europe. She slept with writers, composers, generals. She destroyed marriages and reputations with the same casual elegance as applying perfume. And then she set her sights on a throne. In 1846, she arrived in Bavaria, where King Ludwig I ruled with military medals and a poet's soul. He was aging. She was electric. And within weeks, she wasn't just in his palace. She was in charge. Lola became his mistress, muse, an obsession. He built her a palace, gave her a title, Countess of Landsfeld. He let her sit in on government meetings, and she brought her dog. Yes, really. The court was horrified. The ministers were furious. The people were ready to riot. But Ludwig didn't care. He loved her wildness, her defiance, her sheer refusal to bow. Lola, for her part, ruled with a mix of seduction and violence. She carried a riding whip into court, once slapped a nobleman across the face at a royal dinner, banned entire student groups, dueled with her critics, verbally and sometimes literally. She didn't want to be liked. She wanted to be feared, and it worked. Until it didn't. By 1848, revolution was sweeping across Europe. The people demanded change. The court demanded Lola's removal. Ludwig refused. So Bavaria did the only thing left to do. They forced him to abdicate. A king lost his throne because of a woman who didn't even pretend to be royal. Lola fled the country. She reinvented herself again as a lecturer, a writer, a reformed sinner. She died at 39, in poverty, far from any palace. No diamonds, no titles, no empire. But her story lingered, not as a dancer, not even as a seductress, but as a warning to every throne that thought it couldn't be moved, until a woman in a corset kicked it sideways. She was royalty twice over, daughter of a French king, wife of an English one, born into silk, raised in strategy, and married off to Edward II of England, a man more in love with his male favorites than with his queen. They called her Isabella of France, but history remembers her as something darker, the she-wolf. She was married at age 12, crowned by 16, ignored by 17. Edward II didn't care for her company. He lavished his attention and England's treasury on Piers Gaveston, then, after Gaveston's violent end, on Hugh Despenser, a man so hated by the nobility that his name alone made barons draw swords. Isabella waited. She watched. And when the moment came, she struck. In 1325, she traveled to France under the pretense of diplomacy. There, she refused to return. Instead, she took a lover, Roger Mortimer, a powerful English noble in exile. Together, they did something no queen had ever done. They invaded England. With mercenary forces, political allies, and a storm of scandal, Isabella marched into her own kingdom and took it by force. Edward fled. Despenser was captured and brutally executed. And Edward, he was deposed, imprisoned, humiliated, and in 1327, quietly murdered. Officially, he died of illness, but unofficially, it's said he was killed by red-hot poker, forced into his body in the dead of night. A poetic, grotesque end for a king whose life had been one long public rumor. And Isabella? She ruled as regent for her young son, Edward III. For 4 years, she and Mortimer controlled the crown, together in politics, together in bed, until Edward III grew up and turned on them both. Mortimer was arrested, executed. Isabella was imprisoned, spared death only because she was still the king's mother. She lived out her days in relative peace, gardens, books, whispers. But history never forgave her, a queen who turned on her king, a woman who used sex, scandal, and steel to unmake a monarchy. Was she a hero, a traitor, a survivor? Maybe all three. But one thing is certain. When Isabella smiled, men lost their heads, and sometimes their thrones. No woman in history ruled an empire so vast, so absolutely, and for so long, while also being reduced by rumor to one unspeakable lie. This is Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia, lover of Enlightenment philosophy, military reform, and, if you believed her enemies, horses. We'll get to that. But first, the power. She was born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst, a minor German princess with good manners, fluent French, and ruthless ambition. At just 14, she was shipped off to Russia to marry the future emperor, Peter III. He was childish, awkward, toyed with dolls in bed, and once dressed in military costume to perform solo battles with rats. Catherine was not impressed. She studied Russian in secret, read Voltaire under her bed sheets, built alliances, and when the time came, she removed him. With the support of the military and political elite, she staged a bloodless coup in 1762. Peter was arrested, forced to abdicate, and mysteriously died soon after. Officially, a quarrel. Unofficially, assassination. Neatly done. And Catherine became Empress of Russia, not by marriage, not by birth, but by sheer terrifying competence. She ruled for 34 years, expanded Russia's borders, reformed its laws, corresponded with philosophers, modernized the empire. She was brilliant, disciplined, charismatic, and yes, she had lovers, dozens of them. She didn't apologize, didn't hide. Catherine kept a waiting list of handsome noblemen, elevated them with land and titles, and then quietly dismissed them when she was done. Some were grateful, some not so much, and it was from them, bitter courtiers, angry aristocrats, jealous men, that the most infamous lie in history was born. They said she died while attempting to have intercourse with a horse. Let that sink in. The woman who expanded an empire, led armies, outsmarted Enlightenment kings, and rewrote Russian law, was remembered for a barnyard slander. It's not true. It was never true. She died in her bed, from a stroke, surrounded by servants, not stallions. But the rumor stuck, because when a woman holds that much power, there will always be someone trying to reduce her to a punchline. Catherine the Great wasn't destroyed by scandal. She absorbed it, turned it into fuel, and reigned anyway. History tried to tame her. She laughed and ruled. If Catherine the Great ruled with charm and brilliance, Queen Ranavalona of Madagascar ruled with one guiding principle. I will not be ruled. Not by men, not by foreigners, not by religion, reason, or mercy. She became queen in 1828, after the sudden death of her husband, King Radama, and after, let's say, a very convenient purge of any rival bloodlines. Her rise was quiet. Her rule, anything but. Ranavalona was the first and last word in the kingdom. She reversed her husband's westernizing reforms, expelled Christian missionaries, and announced that Madagascar would remain sovereign, even if it meant killing everyone who disagreed. And many did. She didn't just ban foreign influence, she slaughtered those who welcomed it. Christians were persecuted, Bibles were burned, missionaries executed. But what truly made her infamous was her preferred form of justice, tangina, a traditional poison ordeal. If you were accused of anything, stealing, blaspheming, or just existing inconveniently, you were made to eat 3 pieces of chicken skin and a toxic nut. If you vomited it all back up, innocent. If not, guilty and dead. Under her rule, an estimated 20% of Madagascar's population was killed. 1 out of 5 people. She executed nobles, burned entire villages, used forced labor to build massive public works, with a death toll in the tens of thousands. Europe was horrified. They called her a tyrant, a witch, a madwoman. But Ranavalona saw herself as something else, a wall, a bulwark against colonial invasion, and in a way, she was right. While other African kingdoms were falling to Europe, Madagascar stayed independent because no one wanted to deal with her. She ruled for 33 years. And when she finally died, the kingdom held its breath. Only then did her successors reverse her isolationist policies. Only then did missionaries and trade return. But by then, the damage was done. And her legend, half fact, half nightmare, was carved into the island's memory like a gravestone. She wasn't a queen of scandal. She was a queen of silence. No affairs, no bedroom intrigue, just blood and power. And while other queens seduced kings into ruin, Ranavalona needed no one. She ruled alone, and she ruled absolutely. Before she wore a crown, she wore nothing at all. This is the story of Theodora, a woman who rose from the theater, the gutter, and the scandalous underbelly of Constantinople to become the most powerful woman the Byzantine Empire had ever known. Born around the year 500 AD, she was the daughter of a bear trainer for the city's hippodrome, an arena of wild beasts, wild politics, and even wilder people. She grew up backstage in a world of grease paint, gamblers, prostitutes, and circus performers. Respectable society turned up its nose at her, while eagerly buying tickets to watch her perform. She became an actress, which in that time was not just performance, but a euphemism for sex work. She danced. She mimed obscene scenes. She offered companionship to senators, merchants, soldiers, anyone who paid. By age 15, Theodora was infamous in Constantinople. Her beauty was legendary. So was her vulgarity. One chronicler, not a fan, wrote that she performed nude, lying on her back while trained geese pecked grain off her body. Was it true? Maybe. Or maybe it was the earliest version of a political smear campaign. What's certain is that Theodora vanished from the capital in her late teens. She reappeared in North Africa, a penitent, she claimed, working for the church and spinning wool, and then she returned to the city. Transformed. Gone was the actress. In her place stood a woman cloaked in mystery, intelligence, and new ambition. She had charm, poise, a mind as sharp as the mosaic tiles that would later depict her in eternal gold. That's when she met Justinian, a rising star in the imperial court, the nephew of the emperor himself. He was smart, legal-minded, obsessed with order, and completely smitten. But Justinian couldn't marry her. Roman law forbade nobles from marrying actresses, even former ones. So what did he do? He changed the law. Justinian had it rewritten to allow their marriage, and not long after he became emperor. She became Empress Theodora. Together they ruled one of the most powerful empires on earth, not as figurehead and consort, but as co-rulers. When the Nika riots broke out in 532, one of the most violent revolts in Byzantine history, Justinian panicked. He wanted to flee. But Theodora stood firm. She dressed in purple, the imperial color, and said, "If flight is your choice, go. But I will not leave. The royal color makes a fine burial shroud." Her speech changed history. They stayed. The rebellion was crushed. The throne endured. Over the next 2 decades, Theodora passed laws improving the rights of women, banning forced prostitution, granting more protections for actresses and widows. She was also ruthless. She orchestrated purges, silenced enemies, kept a network of spies. She smiled in church and whispered commands in the halls of power. She died in 548. Still Empress, still feared, still unforgettable. From the brothel to the basilica, Theodora didn't just wear the crown. She owned it and made the empire bend to her will. Her name was never just a name. It was a warning, a whisper through the marble halls of Renaissance Italy, a perfume laced with arsenic. Lucrezia Borgia, daughter of Rodrigo Borgia, who became Pope Alexander VI, possibly the most corrupt pope in the Church's long, strange history. Her brother, Cesare Borgia, a cardinal who left the robes behind for armor and bloodshed. Her mother, a noble's mistress. Lucrezia was born into chaos, raised in palaces where popes plotted wars and cardinals drank wine over assassination maps. By 11, she was fluent in Latin, Greek, and manipulation. By 13, she was married off to a powerful noble as part of a political alliance. She would go on to have 3 husbands, each carefully chosen, then discarded, depending on what her father or brother needed that week. When her second husband, Alfonso of Aragon, grew inconvenient, he was attacked in the streets, then finished off in his bed by strangulation. Lucrezia was likely in the next room, praying or smiling. Then there were the rumors, and oh, did they bloom. They said she slept with her father, with her brother, that she held orgies in the Vatican, that she wore a hollow ring filled with poison, ready to twist into a lover's wine. Some said she never wore undergarments. Others claimed she wore nothing but diamonds behind palace doors. But none of it was proven, and that's what made her so dangerous. Lucrezia was unreadable. She was soft-spoken, charming. She painted, prayed, hosted poetry readings. She was also a survivor. When the Borgias fell from power, she remarried into the Este family of Ferrara. She transformed herself into a duchess of impeccable grace. She built hospitals, funded artists, protected the poor, and ran the duchy with more skill than most men ever could. She died at 39, worn down by childbirth and years of courtly games. She was buried not as a poisoner, but as a beloved duchess. And still, the rumors lingered, because Lucrezia had committed the one unforgivable sin for a woman in power. She never let them know the truth. Was she an angel in silk or a demon in lace? History never decided. But when people say her name, they still lower their voice. And now, the crowns are gone. The beds are cold. The palace windows are dark. The queens who scandalized empires, seduced generals, slept beside coffins and whispered through revolutions, have all gone quiet. Their stories flicker like candles at the end of a long feast, still warm, still glowing, but no longer burning. They were called whores, witches, madwomen. They were feared, worshipped, slandered, and adored. Some ruled with beauty, some with poison, some with grief that clung like velvet in the dark. And yet, for all their sins and all their brilliance, they shared one impossible truth. They were never allowed to simply be, not just women, not just rulers, but something between myth and threat, too clever to be ignored, too free to be forgiven. So tonight, we lay them down, one by one, in chambers made soft by silence. Let Theodora rest far from the arena. Let Lucrezia breathe, free from rumor. Let Marie Antoinette sleep without powdered wigs and court whispers. Let Messalina slip beneath silk sheets where no knives wait in the shadows. Let Joanna forget the coffin. Let Catherine forget the lies. Let Ranavalona set down the sword. They have nothing left to prove, not to men, not to history, not to us. Only sleep remains now. No thrones, no husbands, no expectations, just silence, like velvet over marble, like candle smoke curling up to the rafters. You've wandered through centuries tonight. You've passed through corridors of scandal, kissed the hem of empires, and survived the perfume of danger. But now, you're far from all that. Here, there are no royal obligations, no whispered betrayals, no political marriages to endure. Just breathe, soft, slow, and safe, the kind of quiet that even queens never found. But you have. Let the crown fall. Let the scandal fade. Let the story end in sleep. Good night, sovereign. You are at peace.